President-elect Joe Biden has started to name his economic cabinet picks, including Janet Yellen for Treasury Secretary, Wally Ademio, Deputy Treasury Secretary, Neera Tanden as Director of Office of Management and Budget, Research Director with the American Economic Liberties Project, Matt Stoller. He joins me now for analysis on Biden's team so far. It's good to see you, Matt. How are you?
Good to see you.
Yeah, so, just tell us a little bit about this team. You've got some unique insight into exactly these policies and more that they might push. And also, just give us more of an insight into exactly why these appointees matter so much. What are the type of policies, regulatory agencies, and more that are going to be affected by it?
Well, it seems like what Biden is going for is a team, every one of whom can separately get Hamilton matinee tickets. That's the... So this is good because they really have an incentive to deal with the pandemic. Otherwise, there are no more, then Hamilton can get back together and do matinees again. So that's the first thing.
Right.
The criteria here is basically, are you in the kind of mob, right? Are you in the mafia of Democrats, elite Democrats who know each other, who trust each other? And if you are, then they'll put you in a position of power. There are some diversity mandates, but that's essentially all this is. It's just friends, helping each other. Mm-hmm. Now, nobody has any idea what this means for policy. It's just not clear. So for someone like Neera Tanden, who is she's like aggressive on Twitter, and she's known to be pretty partisan, and the issue for someone like that, but she's not ideological in any meaningful sense, right? She's not known for having strong ideas and pursuing them. For someone like that, the open question is, can she do the job at the Office of Management and Budget, which is a hard job and an important job? Like, you want to put a ruthless person who knows numbers, who knows the law in that position. But they're just putting Neera in there because, whatever, that she's part of that kind of group. And that's kind of what you're seeing across the administration. So it's not clear what any of this means for policy. It definitely means that policy is taking kind of a second, it's a secondary consideration. And I think all of this is reflective of an administration and a campaign that where, Biden wasn't clear about what he wants to do. He's still not clear about what he wants to do. And that's kind of where we are. So you can just kind of guess, but we don't really know.
Yeah, and I guess that's my real question here, which is what you've always been outspoken about, is that in order to move forward, you have to admit a couple of things. That Obama was not a very good president. And if you can't admit that, then you really can't move forward. And yet all of these people, as I understand it, either worked for Obama or were huge supporters of him and more. does that, I guess if we're trying to extrapolate policy, does that just mean more of failed consensus politics? I
don't know. The interesting question is I think they've learned. I think that in 4 years of watching Trump and seeing China and various other aspects of the boundaries of reality move, I think some of them have probably changed their minds about inequality, about trade, about antitrust, a couple of things. But yeah, if you can't admit that you have a problem, then you can't start addressing that problem. And I think the fundamental issue with both the Democrats and the Republicans, you see some different changes here and there, is that they are both wedded to an ideology where power and institutions are not meaningful parts of the way they think about the world. So to put it in maybe a more clear way, Democrats want to do good. They don't want to fight bad. Mm-hmm. And they are very, very, very reluctant to wield power from public institutions, to structure markets, to take on companies, things like that. They're just that's inappropriate. It's not corruption. They just don't think it's appropriate. And there's kind of this weird transition period. And a lot of these people who kind of grew up in that world of neoliberalism, they know it's wrong, but their instincts are all to keep doing that. And so it's kind of this open question of, all right, well, what do you do now that you have these giant tech monstrosities that emerge because of the policies you put together? I don't know. That's up to them. And I don't know. I don't know the answer.
One thing I saw that you were saying is that the real test is going to be some of these sub-agencies. And I covered why OMB is important because of this agency called OIRA. Or you're going to see the FTC, other places charged with regulating hundreds of billions of dollars in capital and industries. We don't have an indication there yet. What do we know about the transition team?
Yeah, I mean, I think not a lot. I mean, I know a lot of people on the landing teams, and these people are going through and trying to figure out what Trump did and what their policy options are, but they're not making decisions about personnel, and they're not making decisions about what policies people are going to pursue. I think those decisions are held at a higher level, but and they're being very, very kind of cagey about what they're going to do. I say this sort of. But I suspect it's probably not that they're withholding information so much as they haven't made any decisions, because I suspect that policy is a secondary concern. They're going to try. I mean, I think what Biden wants to do, and it's very reasonable, is he wants to address the pandemic. That's probably their number one thing. They want to address the pandemic. They want to make sure they won the election. This is the sort of the charitable way to put it. The not charitable way to put it is they just aren't. Policy is not very important to them. Running the government's not very important to them. It wasn't particularly important to Trump. It wasn't particularly important to Obama. It may not be important to this group of people either. I mean, they'll say it's important, but I don't know. I mean, that's kind of the open question. And so lower, ticket agencies where there's a lot of meaningful power, who knows if they'll say, oh, we should do something with this. We should use this power to achieve something.
Yeah, and I guess let's talk about that. What are the consequences of not really caring about policy? I mean, to me, that just means you go on autopilot, and there's going to be big problems if we do that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing that gets you into really dangerous wars. Like China's really dangerous right now. What they're doing with Australia, where they're just literally falsifying pictures of Australian soldiers murdering Afghan children, and Chinese spokespeople are just putting this out and saying Australia is terrible. I mean, China's a really scary problem. It's just it's not obvious what to do about it. And if you don't have clear thinking going on about a problem like that, you wander into war. Right. And that's not something that's really dangerous. I mean, there are a lot of problems like that in this world right now, because I think, Obama didn't do a particularly good job and Trump didn't do a particularly good job. And now we have a lot of sort of accumulated problems. And you need people that are affirmatively trying to address those, assessing them and saying, here are the tools that we have. So the risk of not actually paying attention when you put someone like Neera at OMB, who doesn't know what she's doing. She's just not capable. She's just not competent. I mean, that's just the bottom line. She can't do the job, whether you like her or not. She can't do it. You put someone like that at OMB, then what ends up happening is the sort of the drones at OMB run everything, and no decisions get made, and random projects get killed, and kind of unseen, unnamed bureaucrats run everything, and then. For Democrats, and I'm a Democrat, but, 2 years later, people are like, why didn't anything get better? And then they'll be like, oh, it's the centrists. Oh, no, it's the progressives. And they'll get mad. And then, the Republicans will get elected. And then maybe the Republicans will have the same problem, or maybe they'll do something different. But ultimately, you lose political power, or you lose a war, or there's some sort of discontinuity where society really suffers. I mean, we're kind of getting to that point where society at this point, our cultural fabric is so frayed because of bad leadership for so long that we are starting to kind of hit the shoals in terms of our society. It's not just elections that are going to be, there's not just going to be changes coming from elections. There are going to be changes coming from very serious crises that are going to hit our society in meaningful ways.
Yeah, I think it's very important to keep in mind. All right, Matt, thank you for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
All right, coming up, White House reporter for Axios discusses how Republicans are planning to stall Biden's cabinet nominees. That's when Rising continues.